I got an audience of one today.
I'm sure people are still getting.
If it's just me and you, we're gonna go through that. All right, Tanner, we're gonna go ahead and get started.
Is there anybody on Zoom?
No, nobody on Zoom. So we'll take a minute just to thank everybody for coming out. I appreciate, everybody taking the time this morning, respecting my time to be here to teach. Thank you guys all for being here. It's really great. It's exceptional.
Remember to leave people on YouTube.
I can't get the slides to work. Oh, there we go. All right. You know about the TCPA?
Do.
You do? Don't call people who don't want to be called. If you do on accident, just be nice to them and, politely get off the phone.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if that's what they say in here, but I'm guessing that's probably the general theme.
Yeah.
KWRI has carefully prepared all materials, but do not guarantee the accuracy or make any express or implied warranties about the information. I hadn't read that one before.
Have you accidentally called somebody like that before or across that?
Yeah.
Yeah, how'd it go?
Usually it only goes somewhere.
Right.
So if somebody says that to you on the phone, I just try to say, I'm sorry, and then make sure you remove them if they're in command or whatever, like archive. Put a note in there.
Yeah.
Because I think when people get in trouble, it's because they keep doing it. They keep calling the person, even though they're like, dude, quit calling. And, and then they pass it down to somebody else, on the team, to give it a try. And I think those people are kind of walking on a thin line. Fair housing warning. Buyer letters, videos, and photographs may lead to fair housing violations. Did you know that if you had a buyer in a house, they can't take pictures without permission?
They can take pictures of the inside.
Correct. Yep. Warning buyers, letters, videos. Oh, maybe they're talking about sending the buyer or sending the seller a video if you're a buyer. All right. The course overview. So I think these are the three that. Have you been to any of these three, Tanner? So that it started off with spark your career, embrace your job, connect with your market, and we are on session 4, define your values. Do you know what that means?
Defining one's own value.
Yeah. Yep.
I think.
Yeah. I'm sure there's going to be a really fancy definition.
Yeah.
Here. My take on the value proposition is what are the skills that you bring to the table that set you apart from Kurt or another agent,
right?
So there's 5 things that we're going to do today. We're going to try to go through them as diligently as possible. The value proposition, what matters to buyers and sellers, define your value proposition. We're going to recap with some ahas. And then we're going to talk about the daily success system. All right. So first up is the value proposition. And the value proposition, thanks for coming, Kurt. I appreciate you taking the time to drop in. Yeah. I have a closing at 10 that I missed for this big crowd. So I thank everybody, even the people, maybe later on YouTube. Thank you guys for watching. I think I'll have a bigger crowd there. So
instead of 1.
What's that?
3 people watch instead of 1 in person.
I know. We'll get the views later, guys. Come on, stop. So here are as promised, Tanner, here are the fancy definitions of the value proposition. It's a unique, memorable, persuasive statement that expresses the true value of working with you. You want to read the next one?
It addresses the specific and special needs of the buyer and sellers in your market.
Yep.
Okay.
It states what you will do for your client to earn the commission or fee that you're working for.
Holds you accountable to high standards.
All right. So top agents can easily explain what services they provide to anyone who hires them. Gary Keller. Where is Gary? He must have left. Benefits of the value proposition. So the value proposition is going to help your clients understand what your value and expertise is that you bring to the table. It also protects your commission. So defining your value and letting them also experience it, see it firsthand. Sometimes you have to remind people too in the transaction what you're doing at that moment that is, like, because you're also going to try to get referrals out of these people that you've closed business with, right? So the value proposition is not just something that you want to talk about up front. You have to continually talk about the value that you bring to the table. And if there's any first-hand experience, like in the transaction, I always do that. Like, hey, do you remember, I was going over a settlement statement yesterday. And the agent was like, wow, I can't believe how much money you guys make. And it seems like you really love your job. So I think it's really cool that you get to make that kind of money and do something you really love. And I didn't know how to take that. I didn't know if it was like she's telling me that I'm overrated and overpaid, or she was being genuine, like, wow, like I never knew that was an opportunity.
Yeah.
And so, I had to remind her, like, hey, yeah, I was like, we get to make a lot of money, but remember, like, I was fighting tooth and nail for, like, they were trying to go against the contract and have her come out of pocket, and so, I had multiple agents even call me when I listed the home saying, dude, you're crazy. That house is worth 245 and we sold it for 270. So like, all the other agents would have convinced her to sell it for 250.
Yeah.
I sold it for almost 280. The total commission, both sides, was 16,000, eight something a piece. But I got her $30,000 more than any other agent would have even got her. So I'm like, and there was issues along the way, but also like, we
kind of naturally.
And because we do the contract, like we held the buyer to the terms of the contract and we got to close.
Yeah.
Where, there's lots of opportunity for you to roll over and just take what the buyer's agents and what their lenders are telling you, or you fight back. I'm the kind of agent that fights back to make sure that what is on the contract sticks and it closes at that.
Right.
And that's one of the things as far as my value proposition. So it protects your commission. The last thing you want is a commission equity. You know what a commission equity? Yeah.
Like a hysterectomy?
Yeah.
What is it? Oh, well, I'm
it's
not
where
gonna
you
sit
cut
into
the commission off.
Oh,
You don't want to get the commission cut off. You know what I mean?
yeah. No, yeah, definitely not.
So, and it also builds strong and trusting relationships. So, before like the whole NAR thing and stuff, I wasn't as good at explaining the value that we bring through the transaction. We did it all on the front end. And, so after you do something of value during the transactions, also, those are high points where you can send, your referral requests, where you're, kind of coaching them to give you a 5-star review.
Yeah.
Right. Hit them on the high. Because even when people are appreciative, and you did all the things, and then you send them a post closing, thank you with, coaching them on how to leave your review, they get busy. Sometimes they don't. But when they hit, after you just did something where you negotiated, you saved them money, you did something of value that, that shows You know, that's why they chose you and decided to pay you big bucks to do what you did. Value proposition examples. So do you want to read these all?
I remember this from last year.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's the same slide as
Yeah.
last
Yeah, yeah.
year. Okay.
I'd never heard of Slack though, and I don't know what Slack, like what company that even is the downright pleasant to work together.
Slack is like a group messaging platform, I think. I think the office used to use
Like a
Slack
connecting
as
kind of.
Yep.
Okay.
Where you one easy value proposition is communicate, like over communication.
Mhm.
There, like any consumer would appreciate it.
Yeah.
And it's not something that you have to spend a lot of money on. You know, it's something that if you just get in the habit of over communicating, especially with clients.
Yeah.
But the other thing is, you know, the other part of value where you know, the quicker you put problems on the table where there's, you know, like there's multiple parties that are all trying to cross the same finish line.
Right.
You guys are all working towards the same goal. And
Yeah.
so,
This is how we get there.
yeah. So what, you know, so what I've experienced is majority of the agents don't want to give the bad news or whatever the news is. And so they hold on to it, trying to figure out a solution by themselves. And when in reality, if they just have put it on the table and let everybody who's also working towards that same goal come up with a solution, it would have happened faster and it would have probably created a win-win, which is part of our culture.
Yep.
So, you know, so there are other underlying things that this presentation isn't going to talk about as far as value that, you know, could still be, you know, pretty significant. Like, you know, but Slack is kind of that. It's a way to over communicate. So, you know, I've got, I think, 9 total listings at the moment. 5 are active and 4 are pending. But on my active listings, if there's not activity, I have to reach out to my people. And just like, even if there's no news, they need to hear from me, right? Because what happens is if you didn't have it priced right, you weren't communicating, you know, like the things start stacking up against you to when you come up against your expiration date, they second guess whether or not they even want to work with you because you weren't giving them, you know, any, you know, even if it was no news, you know, that would have avoided that situation by just doing a weekly follow-up and just creating a habit of, hey, Mr. Seller, I don't have any real news, but I just didn't want a lot of time to go by without us talking.
Right.
You know, do you have any questions? I can send you some reports. You know, we can, you know, if you'd like to look at a target market analysis, we can kind of see where the most activity is. But that communication is what gets, you know, that's where you're going to learn like what the motive is. What, hey, Brian, Tanner, I got to sell this thing like, you know, by the end of March, you know, like we need to come up with a strategy to get it sold. But if you hadn't communicated just to say, hey, I don't really have anything, you know, what, you know, do you have any questions, concerns? Like,
Right.
you're going to learn that stuff just through those communications. That is part of a value proposition because I'll tell you, a lot of agents don't do it.
Mhm.
Yep. So KW and market center value. Let's see what page we're on here.
What's your name?
Erica.
Eric Sanders.
All right. So it's not, I don't think it's on that page, but this is So there are a couple things, I don't know if I'm on the right slide right
There's
now.
another, might have been another Ignite book down here.
Um, That's a participant guide. You can follow that one if you'd like. So we're going to go into, some of the,
Have you been taking Ignite like every class?
I did second.
Oh, okay. Are you like next time?
Oh, yeah. Oh. Oh, okay.
so this is talking about, so like if you're a newer agent, right? And so like I can talk, part of my values, a lot of my experience, right? So when I go into a listing, for example, I use my experience as a mortgage loan officer to make sure that the seller knows, hey, as offers come in, we have a pretty diligent checklist that we go through. It's almost like an interview. So as I get a pre-approval, I interview the loan officer and I ask very open-ended questions relative to the purchase contract that I received from the buyer, that they pre-approved, right? But by doing that, I can determine whether or not they actually did their upfront like due diligence to make sure that they verified the buyers. So when you see a pre-approval, they're not all pre-approved. What it is they filled out an application. They've put a lot of like, I don't want to call maybe they're assumptions, but they're basically putting their interpretation of like, hey, I make this amount of money. But in reality, sometimes the paycheck stuff comes in and then the underwriter calculates the income and it could be a little less, it could be a little more. It could but that happens a lot, So what I like to do is make sure a couple things like, hey, the offer that you're writing matches up. So in the contract, it says conventional, FHA, VA, the different types. So I'm not saying, hey, Mr. Lender, I see that you have an FHA loan at 97.5%. Like I'm saying, hey, Mr. Loan Officer, I have a pre-approval from you for so-and-so as the buyer. Could you please walk me through your loan structure? Right.
Okay.
So he starts telling me, yeah, we ran it like this, right?
When you ask that question, are you looking for specific, not one specific answer, but maybe certain things for them to be saying, or is it
Well,
just
it's
kind of like
just-
you just let them go?
No, I let him go. So that's the first question I asked was I'm like, hey, walk me through your loan structure, and then they start telling me what it is. I'm looking at the first page of the contract to say, all right, he said FHA, they said conventional. That's a red flag. That's the
sure.
first one, So but that happens all the time where and an agent sees that they're pre-approved. They don't know how to ask the right questions to the loan officer to make sure in fact that if you so we do a good job of making sure that when we go under contract, it's with somebody who can close, not a BS approval. So that's part of my value proposition. I talk about that. That's part of my experience. If you don't have experiences to talk about as a new agent, leverage the market center. So or I think the number's even bigger, but we've got 200,000 agents worldwide. You've probably heard me say this before. For so long, I've been licensed to sell real estate for 10 years now. But for the first 7 or 8 years, I've cast this small net as far as I thought I could throw, which would be my, footprint, maybe 4 counties total.
Yeah.
But in reality, we've got, partnerships in Jamaica. We've got partnerships in we're worldwide.
Yeah.
So I quit being the Cincinnati real estate expert and I started to become just the real estate expert. So like if you need help in California, I can find you the top agent in minutes. I can actually find the top 3 and personally call them to see if they're going to be a good fit for my people.
Mhm.
You know, so like that, and I have no problem doing that because I can track the referrals. I can like that is a source of income.
And I could put like buying a house for less than appraisal value, like 5 grand under appraisal. Like that's pretty valuable, I think.
Yeah, I mean,
A part of it, something I could.
yeah, if you're working with buyers and you have firsthand experience of being able to do, hey, this is, here's what we do. Um, you, my value for the buyers is I'm not going to sell anything. In fact, I tell a buyer, like, you're going to have to convince me you want the house more so than I'm going to try to convince you, right? You have to sell it to me. But I'm going to make sure that you have all the information to make sure that this is the house you want, right? And buyers love that because there are other agents on the other end saying, pressuring, and if you just set expectations, you're starting to master the real estate, sales process. If that's all you have to do is set an expectation and be like, hey, look, here's what it is. I'm not going to convince you got to buy this. I'm going to make sure you have all the information to make sure that you're going to make a good decision.
Yeah.
And we're going to help guide you to do that. Right? And it's multiple ways through initial walkthrough the house. What are you looking at? What are you talking about? Do you know how to look at like a compressor on the outside, for an AC? Do you know how to look at that and tell what year that thing was manufactured? I do. But that's experience-based stuff. I suggest if you don't know that stuff, take as many classes as you can because that saves you time. Because if you're like, hey, this thing's from, oh shit, 1972, because you know how to read the label on it, and you're like, that's $6,000-7,000 in HVAC stuff that you're gonna have to do maybe soon, but that in the showing versus having to get into inspections to find that stuff, just by knowing little things like that and knowing what to look for, looking for water in the basement, just scanning things as you're walking through a house. That's a value. Because in reality, if you're not seeing these things and then they go put $500-600 on an inspection report to find out that this thing is an absolute turd, that's kind of on you as an agent. You could have saved him $500-600 by but yeah, for sure. Like using a showing to, hey, you're gonna fall in love with the layout and all the things, but I'm not looking at that stuff, right? That's what y'all are gonna do to see if but I'm looking at things that are substantial. I'm looking at the shingles to say, all right, what kind of shingles are these? There's two types. There's a 3-tab shingle, which is very flat, or there's a dimensional shingle. There's a big difference as far as like how long that's gonna last. If you're able to look at it and be like, man, that's older. Roofs aren't cheap. So you're able to start, or like, hey, we know this roof might be an issue. Let's put it in the offer that it's a concern, so that if our offer gets accepted, we've at least had that part mitigated. But that's huge value. It may take you longer to get people under contract when you're that diligent, but you're going to get raving fans.
Mhm.
Because if you're pointing out kind of these flaws that are preventing them from writing offers, you're just going to have to show more houses till y'all find the right one. But it's the right thing to do. You're being the best fiduciary for your people.
Can't not point something out.
Like, be surprised.
Well, you should. You
Yeah.
should.
No, like when,
Yeah.
but like
Because like you said, like they're really there just looking like, oh, where would I put my couch? Where would I
They
do
are.
this?
They're
and that?
they're
And, like,
overlooking stuff.
you
Yeah,
need to look at it from a little bit different perspective.
yeah. Another
The well-being.
another thing for another piece of value that doesn't cost anything is having a good lender partner. And when I say that, what I mean is knowing, if there's a hot house, that there's going to be a lot of activity on. When I say over communicate, that's on. So like when you have a good lender partner, you become a tag team, right? Now you're both advocating for a client, and you find somebody that has the same moral compass as you. Like, hey, we're gonna educate people and guide them on just doing the right thing, and like take the commissions away. We're just gonna focus on doing the right thing for people, and in return, we'll get paid.
Yeah.
But if you find a good lender like that, you become a tag team to where, as you guys are both educating and pushing, not pushing, but like moving people
Yeah.
down the path.
Got it.
Yeah. You're, it becomes easier as an individual agent for sure, because guess what? Once you have a buyer signed and they're ready to go, there's not a lot of inventory. So there could be some time that passes before, a home is even available to see. But then, you get busy trying to service other clients, that lender can help you to be like, hey, and the other part of it is to understand if there's a situation where a property is going to go over ask, the lender communicates what that would look like as far as their payments, so that they're prepared in a situation where they see 9 other people in the house, that they're prepared to actually put their best foot forward.
Yeah. I think the connections is a good thing, like with your value proposition, not just yourself, but the resources you have and the reach
Your
you
allied
have.
resources are huge as far as value proposition, because you just align yourself with the right people, and they bring value that doesn't cost anything, right? So like partnering with an HVAC company, there's one that I partner with that every time I list a house, they come out for no charge and they do an inspection of the HVAC and the air conditioning system, and they put the reports in a binder that is attached on the like air handler of the furnace. So when people come, or if I'm doing an open house, that's part of what we do is we go grab the binder, we have it on the counter, so that when people are like, what year's the furnace? Actually, we have a full inspection report on that, everything checked out good. Here's all the information. Guess what? If something comes in on the inspection report that says, oh, it's an old furnace, and we've already provided that, hey, we've been regularly servicing it and it just passed an inspection, guess what? That's going to be off the table as far as negotiations later, because you did a little bit of work up front. And they're big ticket items, right? So like when I see an older one,
How do you get them to come in there for free every time? Like, what do you do for them?
I allow them to come into the home and put their little service sticker on that furnace, so that the next time it breaks down, they're going to probably get the call and not somebody else.
True.
And guess what? That's a value proposition for the That's how I presented it to the HVAC company. I said, hey, wouldn't it be awesome if you could go into all of my listings and put your little service sticker on if you just spent like 30 minutes checking it out, giving us a little report? He said, that's brilliant.
Yeah, there it
It's easy. It helps my people, like that. Those items are usually off the table for negotiations, because we've just done a good job of making sure that they feel good about it. It could be an old system, but we show, hey, everything's working right. Like, don't try to fix something that's not broken. It's good if if you're concerned about it. If you're concerned, how about a home warranty? That's $600, not $6,000 for it. So there's ways to.
Home warranty covers a purchase.
Yeah, if it breaks, if something happens, it might not like pay for the whole thing, but they'll pay for what the majority of it. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yep. So that's one of the first things too. If they do come at us with a concern with that, that is something that you can combat them with. Say, hey, we're not doing a whole new system, but we'll give you a home warranty that covers it for the first year.
Right. Are you also able to do like 2-year options?
Yeah.
Like you can cover it as long as you want, can't you? Technically.
Yep.
So you could be like, we'll do it for 2.
Yeah, I did a 2-year last year sometime. We bought 2 years worth.
And would that be just $1,200 up front, or is that
Yeah,
600 1 year, 600 the next year?
It was all paid up
All
front for that
Okay.
one.
But they
But
could include
you
that
can
within
keep-
the
you can
structure of
keep-
the home purchase and whatnot,
Yeah,
right?
you can keep adding it, even if you paid for 2 years up front.
Right.
You can keep renewing it.
Right. But you don't, but I was just thinking like you don't have to come out with that money. Like if you're the seller, you don't have to come out with $1,200 out of pocket, right? Like you can include it with the.
It comes out of the proceeds.
Okay, that's what I was, yeah, that's what I was thinking. Like it could be included within the structure of the deal.
Mhm.
So it's not like anybody has to come out with 1,200. Okay.
Yeah, it just gets paid at closing.
Yeah.
The invoice gets paid.
Now that's really good value too.
Any ahas?
That right there, like just the furnace, like I didn't know the home warranty covered furnace too. I mean, I was thinking just like dishwasher and
The other
refrigerator.
thing
and-
too is the seller coverage. So talk to Cameron about that with America's Preferred Home Warranty. So if you have a listing, you have the seller sign up for the coverage. And if the buyer doesn't end up asking, if you don't market it and the buyer doesn't end up asking for the stuff, you just never pay the invoice, but you're covered during the listing period because they signed up for it. But then if somebody comes and buys the house and it's not included in that,
Mhm.
they just never, the invoice never gets paid. So it's like no harm, no foul. You were covered if something happened, but if it doesn't and nobody pays for the thing, then it's just, or if the buyer picks a different one, you're like, but if something happened, you have that piece of paper to say, hey, if the water heater went out, it could be covered under that home warranty and they hadn't even paid for it.
Right.
And it's like $199. So at that point, if you had that form signed and the thing goes out and you're like, hey, you're covered, you just have to pay $199 plus the deductible versus, whatever the water or the furnace or what, like, as the items get more expensive, it's more of a benefit to people. But in reality, it's something that you could offer every time and sometimes never even pay for. But you have that seller coverage during the listing period. And that's usually when things happen, like, the refrigerator goes out, you're like, man, I gotta buy a new fridge just to give it to the new, yeah. So that's huge too. But no, just knowing these products too, that's easier for a new agent because you don't have to have experience to bring that value to the table.
Mhm.
You just have to have the knowledge and be a learning-based agent at all times. I've been doing it in real estate now 20 years, licensed for 10. And I haven't learned everything. I'm not even trying to pretend like I have. Not even close. So I'm always trying to learn new stuff because it's going to keep changing too. And some of the other value would be well, we're going to go into actually specifically what matters to buyers and sellers. So we'll go through each of those. So for buyers, their goal is to find just the right home at the best price in the right time with the least number of problems. For sellers, their goal is to net the most amount of money in the shortest amount of time with the least amount of problems. So some of those value propositions that we were talking about mitigate problems on both the buyer and the seller side. So that's also what we refer to as bulletproofing transactions, right? Because if you can put a cap on repairs through having seller's coverage through a home warranty, that's huge, right? When you list with me, you wouldn't be out of pocket for any more than blank for repairs because I'm gonna make sure you have this seller coverage.
So, and I know I'm getting off topic here. With that home warranty though, are you pulling that up in your computer and sending that to them for them to sign before, like you said, they don't even have to pay for it yet, the seller, right?
So
So,
if they want to take it, sometimes they want want it, sometimes they don't. You know, if things are newer in there and they already have a new appliance package and, you know, like the
Right.
mechanicals are all new.
But if
and-
they're like, oh yeah, we'll take that because I won't have to pay for it. That process is just you sending that document, like the America's Approved
Yeah, you
Home
send it
Warranty
to them, and
document.
then they produce an invoice to be paid at closing.
All right, that invoice number at the top.
Yeah.
You don't,
And
Yeah.
so what happens is if the
Snap.
buyer doesn't come through and it doesn't transfer to the buyer,
then you have, it's
the
not included
invoice
in the
never
deal.
gets paid and you don't get any coverage, but it's already passed. Right.
So you have to pay.
And Cameron told me about this. So it's, you know, it sounds kind of like shady, but
But
he
he
told
told-
us to
yeah.
do that.
Yeah. Pretty good. No, that's good.
Because I think the reality is if, you know, the seller's already on for 199, and if you have some questionable items that came back into repair, that's the first thing I try to throw out to be like, hey, I'm going to mitigate as many problems as I can with this off. Just hey, I'm get the warranty, like have the warranty, and that will remove, you know, any doubt on these items, at least for the first year.
Now say, I'll say price, but say the seller. You already provided this. Credit comes back. Home inspection of the buyer, and they still, they don't feel comfortable with it, and they want to say, hey, the sales.
Well, yeah, I would have that. I would have the home warranty, but I also have the inspection from the HVAC company that we know isn't gonna because there are HVAC companies out there that trick people on a daily basis into buying systems that they don't need. And so, you know, we know that our people aren't doing that, right? Like they're not, so they're going to give us a fair assessment of the thing before they even had their inspection done. And we can provide them with copies of those. So they're in that binder that's on the unit, but we also have digital copies that we put in the MLS with like disclosures, feature sheets. And so like, you know, those PDFs also get uploaded so that as buyers agents go to schedule and they're looking at the listings, they can pull those documents.
Now, is this something that we include in the
If there was actually something wrong with it, yeah. If it's like, if they're like, hey, we're just, yeah. Because at that point we had like an HVAC company saying this thing is working just fine. It doesn't need a replacement. You know, it is on the older side. However, it's working. So then that's where I would offer, you know, if the seller was on board with it, all right, let's just, you know, offer the warranty. Mhm. It can save the seller, and it's, you know, it doesn't get used on every transaction, but it should be presented as an option. So like my thing is, if, you know, there are some agents that only want to present what options they have versus like, hey, here's your options, right? Like, and when people have options, they're, you know, like, what's up, Bruce? You see all these people that came for Ignite? I know. You should have seen it. I know. I thank all the future watchers on YouTube because we're gonna have more views later.
All money to be made.
Yeah. All right. So the top 10 service areas of the buyer value proposition are the needs analysis, the pre-qualification or pre-approval. So like this is where, again, if you don't have a good lender partner that you're confident that they're doing a diligent job of making sure that when you go out and write a contract that you won't come back embarrassed because you can't you can't get it done, right? Like that does happen, you know? So having a good pre-qualification and pre-approval to make sure that when you're writing offers, you can make it happen, you know? as far as what's in your control. You know, there are parts of these transactions that are way out of our control. And sometimes we can fight those battles and sometimes we can't.
Now, what if you have, because you mentioned that you would, after you get your pre-approval, that you reach out to the.
Mhm.
make sure everything is faster. Now, if you find out that something's off, something's off, and you, talk to your buyer, and, they want to receive what they provide versus what the lender is saying actually, what they're actually, what do you do?
It's like when things aren't adding up as far as, so I don't say much. I don't want to have a battle there.
Okay.
Like that's not the intention of it, is to like have a clash of personality or, like differences in opinion. But I just take that information back to my seller and I say, hey, like, their offer was good. So it depends too, if they're the only people at the table, or if you're in multiple offers. So I go through that process to say, where I can go back, to say there was 2 or 3 offers that came in. I run through that process and I just write everything down, and I don't let them know anything yet, right? Because all I'm doing is trying to figure out who's our best candidate, right? Who do I think, after talking with all these people, who is the person most likely to get across the finish line with us? And I like doing that process and then figuring out who we think has the best qualifications, so if somebody was high levered, meaning they're not putting a lot of money down and it's FHA versus a conventional buyer who's putting big down payment, like I can restructure that deal in a couple different ways if there's shortfall in the appraisal, and so like there's ways to dissect that deal, versus the high lever deal where they don't have a lot of money down. They don't have money fixes problems in real estate deals. And so I want to choose the person who has the most money. That's how I identify who we want to play ball with, is like, hey, who's got the most money that if the appraisal came in short, I can take them from 70% loan to value to 80% loan to value and fix a gap without affecting my seller. That's value. That's a value proposition. So that's all, that's also comes from experience, because I know how to structure loans and how to adjust things. I could even take it higher than that and close the gap even more to say, hey, your buyer can bring the same amount of money. He just has to borrow more. Close the gap and get it done, But if you don't know how to do that and present that as one of the 2 options to move forward, they're not taking one of them. They're going to come up with their own option, which would be, we want to renegotiate the deal based off the new appraised value. Yeah, so already knowing and saying, and by the way, when that loan officer is telling me all the things and the red flag never goes up, I have a lot of questions for them. And these answers I would never get from their agent. How often has a real estate agent told you, how much money the buyer has to fix a shortfall in appraisal? They don't even know. They don't know that. They're not privy to that information. So I also use that opportunity to cover what if scenarios with the lender. Like, hey, what happens, if, hey, the buyer wrote a escalation clause that took this thing $15,000 over our asking price. That's a little bit of a concern for us on the appraisal. What is the buyer willing to do in that event? Do they have more money to bring to the table? Oh yeah, they got that. They're, without even batting an eye, giving me the information that I need to, even for future negotiation. But I try to mitigate it there and say, hey, either through appraisal gap, I think that'll come back this spring. People who want houses are going to have to do wild stuff to get them if it's if it's a move-in ready, priced right house. People will be fighting for them this spring. So, moving right along, neighborhood information. Does everybody know how to find good neighborhood information?
I couldn't say I do. I mean, I could look on the MLS and like, if I wanted to target an area, I know how, but
Yeah, there's some really cool tools and list reports too.
list reports in the MLS.
No, no, list reports is through Craig in the office. It's through like MBS mortgage broker or it's basically an add-on that he pays for, and it will give you shareable stuff. So you can like pull neighborhood stuff, and if you pulled like an area, it would tell you if you have new listings, it automatically creates these marketing packages that give you information on not just like it'll actually tell you like the closest gyms and restaurants and all the stuff, right? So like but you can also just go in and create one by punching in an address. So if you were trying, that's
Like a
one.
specific address, it will tell you
Yeah.
stuff in the area.
Or if there's already a listing you're going to look at, it'll see that because it pulls the stuff from the MLS. So it may already have a marketing but it tells them like here's the nearest grocery store, different stuff about that. Making offers, negotiating to buy, vendor coordination, pre-close preparation. Does everybody know what that means?
Would they just go on to revisit the house the day of or the night before closing?
Yep, doing a walkthrough. The other important thing is to make sure you go over the numbers. You know, I always go through the numbers before I share it, because I have an eye for settlement statements, and I always find stuff wrong. So, and sometimes title companies assume what your commissions are versus actually verifying them. If you didn't do like a realtor sheet. So, I had a closing earlier this week that they had the commission off by $5,000. And guess what? If that was signed and closed, I can't do anything about it. If everybody signed and they dispersed off of those numbers, I can't change it.
And how did you go about solving that? You just told.
It's part of it's part of our checklist. So like before closing, if a settlement statement comes the day of a closing, we're not closing. I'll straight up tell a title company. We're not like if you want to close on this day, we need to have the settlement statement by this day, so that I can go over all the stuff with my client, not in a rush and not pushing them like we're not going over this shit at the closing table.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's not acceptable. And so even before we go over it with the client, we go through it and make sure that everything is, right and done correctly according to what we have in the contract.
You get that from the title company?
Yeah. Yeah, it's the closing disclosure. It's basically like the final breakdown of all the numbers on the buyers and sellers side. So having people prepped for that is way better than them, reading it before they sign it at the closing table.
Right. I didn't even know you could. I didn't even know you could do that. Like get a settlement statement like that. Like how much farther forward before closing?
At least a day. I just tell them like, look, I'm not taking day of. Like, if you can't produce it by this date, then we just, we can't close that week. Mm-hmm. The new contract has 7 days built in as far as an extension. You don't want to delay the closing, but and sometimes it's unavoidable. But if you know, if you're like in communication, you're over communicating. Like if I don't have it, I'm letting my people know, hey, I don't have the final numbers yet, but as soon as I have them, call me. Or as soon as I can verify, as soon as I can check them and make sure they're good, I'll forward them to you. But skipping that call could be terrible, you know, because then, you know, then, you know, they don't have the numbers, the day of the closing comes and they're feeling like they're rushed. And that's not a raving fan. And, you know, like this doesn't have to be a stressful event. And so I would rather just, again, set expectations with them like, hey, you know, here's what we strive for. We would like to have the closing statement at least the day before. If that happens and like you're gonna know about it, you know, we're not gonna keep it from you. And if we don't have the numbers, if you're okay with it, you know, we can just postpone so that we're not rushed. Now we could get the thing and it could be just fine and everything's good. So I also do a like for my sellers, I'll do when offers come in, we do a net sheet for them on Excel, like an Excel spreadsheet.
Right.
To where, you know, that's also value, another part of it, maybe a value proposition that if you just get good at preparing a good net sheet, but if you start getting really good at that and that number starts matching the number on the settlement statement within a few dollars, like that's pretty good. You know, people's estimated net sheets are way off by thousands. And it's because they don't know how to calculate prorated taxes. They don't even know what paying taxes in the rears means in Ohio. And if you don't know that stuff, you haven't calculated the numbers that come out of the seller's proceeds and your numbers off. So, you know, we're within a few $100, which is pretty, you know, it's pretty good. And there isn't it's not like a crazy formula or science to it. So, but being able to say, hey, your number, because that's what people want, like when you're going down the settlement statement, that's what they want to know is what number, what's their net, what are they walking away from the transaction with? And so when that number starts matching what you estimated, they're like, you know, that could raise problems too, actually, right before closing, where they're like, well, you told us we were going to net closer to this,
Right.
you know, and if it's thousands off, you know, yeah, or delays, you know, because they weren't prepared for it. You set a different expectation. So the top 10 service areas for the seller value proposition is the needs analysis, a pricing strategy, property preparation, marketing strategy, receiving offers, negotiating, getting it sold, pre-close prep, closing, and post-closing. So what the buyers want most from their agent is to help them find the right home to purchase. Only 13% of the buyers want help negotiating the terms of the sale. That's not that important to them. Only 11% want help with price negotiation, and 24% have other wants. So what does this tell you? What does this slide say? What's the story here? They want your help to find the right home to purchase. So it's the home search. So what this tells me is you can't just set somebody on a search and let it go. You need to actively be searching and, you know, presenting homes for them to go see, even if it's a little outside of their box. That's what they want.
This just shows the bias extra miles because they're not looking at anything else other than that. So they just get to a house and it's like, wait, it's coming back. It's coming to this.
Yep. Factors buyers value when choosing an agent. That the agent is honest and trustworthy. Agent's experience, the reputation of the agent, and other. I wonder what the other is. Just a bunch of random stuff, I guess. But only 20%.
Why
But
would they
in all
do that?
fairness, I don't think buyers like if you just went up to people and interviewed random people on the streets and asked questions like this, like we learned last week the average age of a home buyer is up to like 38 years old. So, you know, who did they interview? You know, people who haven't bought a house yet? It's a fair question.
Maybe they get it from the loan people, like how old people are when they're applying for a first time home buyer loan, and go off those numbers instead of like, I don't know.
Experience is even lower than being trustworthy.
How can they give us a 44% other though? Like that's too much of an other. We gotta explain that somehow.
I'm guessing the
or break it
other,
down.
yeah. I'm guessing that the successful buyers agents are the ones that actively put properties in front of people, and so that's what they value the most when asked about it. Not that they're trustworthy and honest. It's wild. What sellers want most from their agent is help price the home competitively. These are all fairly help the seller market the home to potential buyers, help the home within specific, help sell the home within a specific time frame, and help the seller find ways to fix up the home to sell it for more. So, and that's only 16%. Wow. Like that, this one's actually huge because this one, it just, again, if you have the right vendors and things in place, like you can help sellers find ways to fix their home without paying money out of pocket. So like I partner with Right Rug Flooring, one of our affiliates, where if I have like an estate or somebody like a house that I'm like, hey, if this just had flooring and paint, we could get, you know, probably $25,000 more if we just sold it right now. And the cost would be about $8,000. But they don't have the money, like, so I have contractors that between the flooring and the paint would go do all the stuff and then give us an invoice to pay at the closing. So they don't pay out of pocket, but they netted, you know, potentially, you know, $16,000, $17,000 more than if they would. That's you know, where if you're like, if you can show those and then you get really good at documenting that for somebody, and I mean, all your marketing would have to really be is side by side saying, hey, here's how we came in, here's how we sold it. That's all because of, you know, the value we bring to the table when you choose us to work with. Factors sellers consider when choosing an agent. The reputation of an agent is a little more this time. Agent is honest and trustworthy. If the agent is a friend or family member, so almost 20% of the time, you know, it's
Just so you know who you know.
yeah. And then another 44% of other. Factor seller consider when choosing an agent. Sorry, that one, okay. Technology and your value proposition. Any ahas?
I haven't sold anything yet. I mean, I've got like 6 or 7 buyers, but from the selling side, a lot of good things that I wouldn't have known One, because I'd never done it before, but also I just wouldn't have thought about that. Like, just different ways you can show value to sellers, like before you close and the week of closing, how much value you could still bring right then and there.
Yep. So, I mean, there's multiple strategies. I even, like, one of them is, we have some of the agents have a transaction fee that gets charged. So that was actually something I never implemented in my business until I came to this office. And now I set a transaction fee that actually gives me enough money to like pay for services for the client during the or like before the listing. Like an example would be if somebody was like, "Hey, I can't get this house cleaned," or you're there and you're like, "Man, this is kind of a mess. Like they're going to need help getting this thing cleaned for pictures." Charging the transaction fee, you don't get it till later. But if you if you set that to where you have $200 to $300, you can then use that to help. You pay for it up front, but then you get reimbursed basically on the back end when you close the deal. It's something that a seller doesn't realize that they actually paid for that service. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, like, I sold some lady a house. She turned the keys over as they moved completely in it. They didn't have to sell this house to buy the new one. They turned the keys over and it was a wreck. And I'm like, instead of having to call her, like, "Hey, you need to get cleaners," I'm like, "Hey, I'm gonna get this taken care of for you. Like, you don't even have to go back. I'm gonna have my people go over there tomorrow. It'll be clean and ready for pictures." That was a relief for her to be like, "Man, that's awesome." And in fact, she said, "Wow, do you do this for all your clients?" And I was like, "Yeah, like that's what we want to. We want to strive for raving fans. We want people to be like, when you hear real estate, I want you to be in public shouting my name, saying you got to call Brian because he's awesome. He did this, 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 and this for me, or he said he was going to do the things and then actually did them." That's all it really takes, is because you don't have to have this crazy list of things that you're going to do. Just do the things that you say you're going to do in the listing appointment. So like when I say, "Hey, if you sign tonight, I can go ahead and get," this is a soft close for me too. When I'm sitting in front of somebody at the table trying to get the listing, and I'm like, "Hey, let's go ahead and get this signed so I can get the HVAC guys out here ASAP." And when they go, "Yeah, okay," like or like, "Hey, are we ready to get the HVAC guys out here so we can get this thing listed and sold?" "Yes." "Okay, I don't have to do any more selling. Or convincing that, like I'm the guy. I don't have to do any more value spouting anymore. I can just shut up at that point and have them sign."
How do you present your transaction fee? And like,
I
you obviously have
presented
to
it
just
as
say,
the office charges this. I say this is the agent's commissions that we set, and then our office charges a $599 transaction per transaction. And they
That's
usually
it.
don't bat an eye. Chabris Group charges like $795.
yeah,
So but that could also be, like, hey, you got a handyman that's on your like preferred vendor list. Be like, "Hey, I got $200 for you to go do punch out stuff. Can you go over there Saturday?" And then use that as your MOFR. You know what a MOFR is? So a MOFR is where you make an offer for immediate response. That's what it's an acronym. MOFIR, make offer for immediate response. But if you like, that can be something where you're like, because you know that they're going to end up paying it. They don't bat an eye at the transaction fee, but you're like, "Hey, it looks like there's a couple of things here. I'll tell you what, if you go ahead and sign with me tonight, I'll have my handyman come out and start working on some of this stuff this weekend." Okay. Because you've made it easy for them. so that, you know, we could have a whole day of classes on how you can think of like MOFers that aren't gonna, because if you secure the deal, it doesn't cost you anything. It's where if you have to put money out, and you don't secure the deal, like that's not a good business model. But when you're presenting something to get them to act on it and move forward, meaning signing a listing agreement, signing a buyer broker agreement, whatever. Because on the buyer side, it could be something like, hey, when you sign with me, I'm actually going to throw you a housewarming party. And so me and my lender are going to pair up and we're going to cater food for you and 20 of your friends. And they're going to be like, what? You're going to do that for me? Yeah, absolutely. You're going to send me the list of all the people you want to invite. We're going to put all the invites together for you. And by the way, I'm putting them on my database because I want to sell them all houses too. And I'm going to offer them the same thing. And like, you know, do it to where it's like, that's a thing where they're like,
Catered for the moving into the new house.
yeah, so that could be your $200. Like, you know, so if you're on the $399 plan or the launch
I was
plan,
just about to ask you, what plan? do
so
you
I'm on
think?
that, but I'm switching.
Classic?
But even on that, you just charge more than what the office collects, and you have that amount of money that you can then turn around and use for whatever. So if you didn't have to use it as a MOFR, meaning like getting them to actually engage and do business with you, then use it for a housewarming party or something like that.
Yeah.
To where you're, you know, getting their friends to experience what they just experienced. And you threw a kick-ass party, even if it was like a taco bar, you know, you could probably get a taco bar for $200. But if you were also like, hey, like, don't just think that your vendors can be real estate related or ancillary services of real estate. These things can be restaurants. You know, you could partner with a boutique. You could like, you know, so and doing featuring, you know, neighborhood restaurants, doing different things to where you start tagging them on social media, and then you're in front of more than just your audience. You're in front of the people that follow them. You know, so like there's ways to there's ways to use to create value that doesn't cost you a lot of money. You just have to be creative.
What is the acronym making an offer?
MOFR, MOFIR, for immediate response. And that, I mean, we could go so deep on that. Because I like using those, especially as it revolves around like numbers and listing. I have a MOFR that if I go to a for sale by owner, I'll pull it out. If I can't get them to sign, if I haven't built the rapport and I do my soft close and I'm not getting warm and fuzzies, then I pull out my MOFR. And my MOFR would be like, hey, Mr. Seller, you're listed at so for sale on a for sale by owner, if you were like, hey, Mr. Seller, your house is listed at $230,000. And I like to write it all out too. And I do my homework before the listing appointment. But if you walk through this with them where you're like, hey, you know, I found this on Zillow, they're listed at $230,000. Let's just walk through this scenario with a seller. So, you know, I see that you have it on Zillow at $230,000. I'm assuming at that price you were willing to pay a buyer broker, like a buyer's agent, if they brought somebody to the table. Is that a fair assumption?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I assume you were going to do 3%. So let's take 3%. So 230,000 minus 3%. That should figure out 3%. So that's 6,900. And then as a seller, did you know that typically you have, it's right around 1%, we like to factor in as a seller. So that's going to be kind of a combination of your prorated taxes. You have some settlement charges from the title company. So that's 1%. And then there's going to be on 230, you probably have like $500 to $700 for a transfer tax. We'll call it $600. So go walk through that with them. And you're like, all right, so 230,000 minus 4% minus $600 for the transfer tax. So if you sold it for 230, you'd walk away with roughly, as long, is there, do you have any, this is before any mortgages or any payoffs that you have. Do you have any liens or anything attached to the house?
Right.
This doesn't include that. But $220,000 and 220,200 would be the net number that you would walk away with if you sold it for the 230. So what I would tell them is I could guarantee a net number where I'd say, hey, if you don't walk away with at least $218,000, which, it depends on, is this number high or were they high when they came up with the price? It could have been. If this number is outrageous, you're probably going to know that before you go to the point, right? They're like, you're going to have to convince them otherwise. Like, hey, like I can't offer a MOFR where I guarantee a net number if they've overstated themselves. But if they haven't, you could be like, hey, look, how about this? I'm going to put my money where my mouth is, and I'm going to guarantee that if you don't walk away from the table with at least $218,000 for the payoff rating, you won't pay. So essentially, you're going to be able to get almost the same numbers as you will right now, but you're not going to have to do any of the work. I'm going to do all that for you. And oh, by the way, I have this value proposition that we talked about. So you're going to get all of this stuff. And if you don't at least walk away with 218,000, I'll make up the difference, or you won't. That sounds fair. And usually they're like, yeah, that sounds real fair. So I write on the listing agreement, guarantee a net of blank or this, like write it out, figure it out. Like if you haven't left that appointment with a signed agreement, there's still a problem. So there's not a solution. So that's a solution to their problem because they want to, like they are fixated on the amount of money they walk away from the table. So if you say, hey, and you've already convinced them, if you use the right script, that it makes sense for you to meet with me because I'm going to show you a way to walk away with the same amount of money without having to do any of the work. I'm going to do that all for you. Take it all off of your plate. Because let's face it, like selling a house for sale by owner is like a second job. And they're like, yeah, it is. It really is. And so you're selling a solution to that problem. But like I said, we could talk MOFRs all day, and that's not really the value proposition. That's how you get people to sign though. But if you have a good value proposition followed up with a MOFR, you're going to win the agreement most of the time. So now we're going to define our value. So you need to identify your knowledge, attitudes, skills, and beliefs that make you qualified to be a great real estate agent. Transform the value you provide and the value of KW and your market center into benefits for your clients. Build your value proposition statement. Does everybody know what this means? To identify your knowledge, attitudes, skills, and beliefs. Does everybody know how to do that? how you figure out like what,
Is based off your experiences, what you've done, that you know about yourself, that you're capable of.
yeah, I'd say more so like a, color agency. There's a tool that I think could be valuable in helping you understand like who you are as an agent, and it's the KPA.
Oh, yeah.
Have you guys taken that?
So the KPA is the Keller Personality Assessment. And what it does is it just basically helps you identify like your behavior styles and like your personality. Because the reality is like we have to, as salespeople, have to adapt to the people we are presenting to or trying to, do business with, get to do business with us. So there's a couple tools that we use. We like the DISC profile and the KPA. The KPA though has a tool in it called the Job Fit, I think, report. It's either the Job Fit or the Job Match. It's not the normal one that like comes in when you normally take it, but it gives you a breakdown of all the jobs in the real estate industry and how you score. So we use it on my team to figure out what your zone of genius is. If you've never heard of zone of genius, it's something that I heard Jason Abrams talk about, where you're using this as a tool to basically get people in their zone of genius. And that means they're just doing the things that they like to do, that they're good at. And then we take the things that they don't necessarily like to do and they're not good at, and we put that on someone else's. So that we just keep them in their zone of genius, meaning, hey, they're going to be doing things that they love, and we're going to take all the stuff that they hate off the table so that they just can focus and, be great at that. But that helps because you could be like, hey, you take the KPA and look at the job match report, or yeah, I think it's the match, and be like, I'm an operations person, so you should know like my value is going to be in my systems, or you score high in like a marketing role or something like, hey, that my value is how I'm going to market this product for you. So that could be a good, if you haven't taken it, tell Lindsay that you want to. And then when you get the results back, ask her for, if she sends you the job fit report, ask for the job match report, vice versa. I can't remember which one it is. But they don't usually send that other report. And so you were just ranked off of the position that they gave you when they assigned the test to you, if that makes sense. All right. Oh, so did everybody understand what step one was? I kind of skipped before. Just like understanding, like what knowledge you need to have to help starting define it so that you know what to talk about when you're meeting with people. Transform the value you provide in the market and the value of your market center into benefits for your clients. Step 3 is build your value proposition statement.
Is that it?
That's it.
I think we can go, yeah, we can go through though some, if you guys want to start trying to, figuring out what your value proposition is. So like this would be something too where, as a new agent, where you're trying to get, like you're out just socializing with people, hey, what do you do? Instead of I'm a realtor or I'm a real estate agent, and you spout out your value proposition, like you've practiced it.
it's way more impactful than just being, I sell real estate.
I'm pretty sure I have something like that on like my command somewhere that I made. Don't they have something that you make on there, like not your value, but they call it something else, like a summary of you or something that you put on your command, kind of
Like your bio.
yeah, something like
Yeah.
that. Maybe I've kind of done that. And while you were talking, I was just kind of like I wrote down value I bring, and like when we were going through and like mentioning different things that we could do. And I was writing down some stuff that I feel like I do, and also writing down some stuff that I wanted to start to do. But I think I'm really good with communicating, overly communicating, following up, my attention to detail, especially when I'm looking at stuff around a house or going through like my own little inspection, um, and connections. So I put my connections like lenders, the office, outside resources, and affiliates. Um, but I don't think I've like conjured up just like a 2 or 3 sentence value proposition.
What
in
I would
itself.
suggest is take your notes and throw them into AI like chat or whatever you use,
Mhm.
and basically put what you learned today in there, and then have it
Throw
help
some
you
stuff out.
say, hey, how can I take these things that I want to focus on? These are where I feel like I can. This is my zone of genius when it comes to value proposition, where I am going to set myself apart from other agents.
Yeah.
And put that stuff in as the input, and then prompt it to give you,
2 or 3.
yeah,
4
like
seconds.
just where you're like, hey, Tanner's a real estate agent, and then you can actually stop him and be like, no, actually, I'm more than that. Here's what I do.
Because I think that's good. Because like I'm always just like, oh yeah, I'm a realtor. Keller
I
Williams.
mean, it could even be like, hey, I don't like the term realtor. I'm more of a connector. So I want you to think of me all things real estate, not just a real estate agent. But that could be in that part of your thing, like, hey, like, and sorry to correct you, but the reason I say that is because I'm different from most agents. Here's what I do. It could even be that, right? You know what I mean? Like, it's just people are gonna associate you as real estate agent, and you just want to set the.
They're gonna put you in like a category
They
of
will.
people.
Yeah, I mean, when they do studies on real estate agents, we score lower than like used car salesmen and attorneys. As far as like,
Intelligence?
no, as far as like,
Like likableness.
yeah, and just like, the public just doesn't trust us.
Oh, public view of
Yeah,
said
public opinion.
organization or industry. Yeah. We're lower than car salesmen. I've had used car salesmen try and sell me crack before. That's crazy. That we're lower than them. Well, it was at this ghetto ass place in Hamilton that I should not have gone, but I
I used
did.
to find crazy stuff.
And like,
I worked for Enterprise back when I was in
oh, like
college.
the rent a car?
And
Yeah.
I was a car prep.
So you
I
just
was
clean it
vacuuming-
up.
Yeah, I was vacuuming the cars out and wiping down and stuff. And we would find the crazy shit down on the ridge.
Mhm.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Sometimes they'd come back for it, like, got rid
Sorry.
of that. We got rid of that.
That's funny. Yeah. That's crazy. I didn't even know that. I would have never guessed that we'd be lower than you said car salesman and who else?
Like the approval rating, public approval rating.
Yeah. We're lower than car
And
salesmen and
attorneys.
attorneys.
And attorneys.
Yeah.
Probably because it's like, the house is such a big investment.
Well, the reality is we make more than attorneys. They just can bill out consistently, but a top agent can make way more than an attorney. Unless you're like a big settlement attorney, like where you get paid millions on these settlements. But for the most part,
Yeah. Like a top 50, like a top 20 agent.
I think,
like a
yeah, I
top
mean, an attorney bills out at like $500 an hour or something. And I can tell you, I make more than that. I don't work as many hours as them. Yeah, and that's their fault. But when I average it out, I'm over $1,000 for how much work I have to put into each deal and what I get out of it. And that's why I chose this industry versus any other.
Yeah.
Because I leave here, you see, I leave here at 3:30. I'm home and I eat dinner with my family every day. Usually by 4:30 we're eating, you know. And then sometimes I'll work a little bit like, you know, from after we eat or something, but it's, you know, I'm at home.
Yeah.
What questions do you guys have? Yeah, and we barely kind of scratched the surface. There's so many ways that you can kind of define your value as an agent. You just have to figure out like what it is, because you know, like, I can visualize things. So, you know, I can go in and be like, just giving a recommendation. You know, like, hey, let's do this or let's do that. You know, when you have a seller that's on board, willing to listen, you can offer those type of things. You know, there's just multiple ways to bring value. But I think the most important one is educating versus selling. You know, that's where I think my value is different than other agents. And then, you know, I lean on my experience and like my background and being able to, you know the numbers. My value proposition is in the contract. So I know the contracts very well, you know, so when an agent on the other side, you know, is out of bounds on the contract, I call them. You know, I'm not afraid to do that. I'm like, hey, like you are in breach of this contract. I'm a fiduciary for my seller, and if you're in breach of it, I'm calling you out. If I don't, you know, like that's a problem. But I see it all the time where agents just go with the flow. They'll just, hey, like I was told that a lender needed a radon mitigation system installed, and I was like, no, it's not right. They don't require that. It's not a thing, you know. But if I didn't know that, and I went and said, hey, to my seller, the lender this is a requirement. It's part of this, you know, because if you didn't know better, they could have made you believe that it was part of the financing conditions. So the lender required it because this was a situation where the listing happened to go under contract before, and during inspections, the radon tested high. That buyer backed out. We were now privy to that information. They forwarded us a release that said that it tested at 6.8 or whatever. And I think the if it's over 4, they recommend having a system installed. So we updated the disclosure because that's the right thing to do. We were now, you know, we had that information. So I went back to the seller and I said, hey, now that we have this, we need to update the disclosure. So we did that. And the next person put it under contract. Well, it was on the disclosure. They signed off. They weren't concerned with it. And then they also wrote in the contract that they wouldn't ask for any singular item over $1,500, or no, under $1,500. Yeah, they set a threshold of $1,500 and said we wouldn't ask for any single item under that. And a radon system's $1,200. So there was multiple ways where I'm like, A, this isn't like we disclosed it, you signed off on it, you went through the inspection period, didn't ask for it, you negotiated a home warranty.
And then, by the way, you guys set the threshold of $1,500. So like, you know, regardless of anything else, you're gonna have to pay for it. But easily. So then that same agent, because they couldn't get around it with that lender, it wasn't like this was just a weird thing because lenders don't typically ask for that. It was because, like, for a system to be installed, it was only because it had gone under contract the other time and it was updated on the disclosure. Because typically you would find out and the lender would see the original disclosure. It doesn't, like, they didn't know
Stated.
about it.
Yeah.
And then it gets added later and the lender doesn't have the full inspections and everything to see. So it slides through, basically, in most cases.
But because it had already been presented.
But
shown.
because it was, yeah, and like, and we disclosed it, they signed, but they were way outside the window of negotiating when they found out. So what I said was, well, if this was such a concern, like, why are you telling me a week before the closing? I said, this sounds like an underwriting issue, not something that falls back on my seller. So like I fought tooth and nail to get my seller to close at the contract price because I knew the contract, like, and I knew the multiple ways that I was ahead of them as far as, like, you know, like, if they don't follow like the pre-approval, like the approval, full conditional approval is due within a certain time frame. Do you guys understand what that means?
Yeah.
Nobody ever sends it. Nobody ever requests it. You just assume that you're on this, like, you know, well, you're just sailing towards closing and all these things just happen. But those are key pieces. So I'm like, you know, like, hey, if this is a condition on the loan, send me the full conditional approval because it was actually due per the contract 2 days ago. And they're, you know, and then they try to send over like a snippet. And I'm like, no. Read the line. It says that you owe me the full conditional loan approval or commitment within 25 days of acceptance of the contract. So I want the full conditional approval. I want all the pages and I don't want anything redacted unless it's personal, social security number, or something that I don't give a shit about. But I want to see what the conditions are that need to be met still. And so they send that over to me, and radon wasn't a condition. So, like, you know, like, are you guys playing games with me? Or like, because that happens too. You know, there are lenders out there that are slick that are like, hey, I'm gonna get you this system. I'll get the seller to pay for it. You know, and then they go try to walk all over a seller and their agent, try to basically manipulate them into doing something that they're not bound to do. Happens all the time. Where like people probably don't even realize, you know, like people get duped every week on a closing, I would guarantee it. Where somebody there wasn't full transparency and there wasn't full, you know, like, accountability.
That's why we're lower than the car sale.
That's exactly why.
There's something to say that they
Because
add
yeah,
value to.
that's a value proposition on their end. Like, hey, I got you this radon system, but you didn't have to pay for it because I manipulated the seller into thinking that they had to. Happens. I mean, there's just crazy things that happen all the time. I mean, there's discrimination that happens where you're like, you know, like an appraiser goes into a home and they devalue it because they can tell what ethnicity you are by your stuff. Happens. Ask Warren about it.
Yeah.
He does videos on it. This one of the lenders that's an affiliate in the office. He does videos on it several times a year because he finds where people are being discriminated just because of the color of their skin or whatever,
The area of the
neighborhood, or the neighborhood,
Yeah.
or the, you know, and so like, and that's one of his value propositions. But like, I'm one of the people where I'm like, hey, we're gonna do everything above, like, we're doing everything right, and we're educating people, and we're gonna make sure that they make good decisions, informed decisions, because the rest of the people are gonna weed themselves out of this business.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's just the type of people that they are. Because even if it means making an extra couple bucks. I mean, I'm never wanna mess up a relationship with somebody, or even if it's somebody you don't think you're gonna continue to work with after that. It's just like that's their house, like this is their home that they're gonna live in, raise a family in. Like, why be the reason that that gets all fucked up? Like,
And I've even seen it where agents get in the way of getting deals done, and it's like it's not what their clients want. It's just their ego getting in the way.
yeah,
And I try to not do that too. Like I try to just be matter of fact, where I probably rub people the wrong way because I hold them, like I know the contract well enough where I'm like, hey, you've breached the contract. Like at this point, you're going to have to perform. Like that's what it means. Like you have breached, and I'm calling you on it. It's because we are now outside of the terms of this contract, and we need to get it right. Like people will get upset with you for that, but like at the end of the day, it's like hold on, I have a fiduciary to my client, right? And that's the most important thing to me. And like paycheck aside, that's what I'm focused on. Like the paychecks come if that just becomes your focus and you remove the commission from the equation for now, because it always comes back. You always get paid
if you're doing those things,
if you're
right?
doing the right thing.
Yeah. Amazing class, Brian.
Thanks. Don't tell anybody I winged it.
You on YouTube.